It's time now for our call of the day. And today we are talking about UBS's latest note on Beyond Meat, the firm downgrading the stock to a sell rating. That's coming from a neutral rating. They're putting a $73 price target on the stock right now. Beyond Meat shares trading around $100 or so, 98.50, off about 9% on this call. But Jen, I think this note gets into the debate we have had time and time again with Beyond Meat, and Impossible fits in here too, but Beyond is public, so we have more visibility into their business, which is that mix between the grocery store, between being in a restaurant, which channel you'd prefer to sell through, how do you raise brand awareness? And the problem for Beyond Meat is they essentially have one entire possibility of two for their business eliminated right now.
Yeah, exactly. When one of the channels is closed, it's not that great. The two things that struck me about this note, even though it's downgraded to sell in the headline, it really wasn't that negative. I think a lot of this is that this stock, as they note in here, is up so much since its March low, up over 140%. So I think there's a little bit of valuation in here. One part that I hadn't really, I just was going to say digested, and then I realized we were talking about a food company, but I hadn't really absorbed yet, was how much more expensive Beyond is than the actual meat-based products. And we are in a recession. What does that do to the decision you're making actually at the store, which one to pick up and buy? And I think that that's sort of the biggest headwind in here that I took away.
Well, and I think, Melody, it gets to a theme that we've talked about in various ways, during the last 6-7 weeks, which is what does the recovery look like, and what trends that were fashionable or seemed like a nice addition to one's life during a bull market, which one of those fall by the wayside? And I do wonder if just sustainability and wellness, which are things that were very in vogue in 2018, 2019, right? Like, do we just forget about that and say, I'm just happy to have a job and happy to put food on the table?
I think there is an element of that, but in the fake meat, plant-based meat category, I do have to say that a lot of people, not only, of course, it's double the price when you look at patty to patty comparison, but just in terms of ubiquity, right? Availability. I think the kind of bullish argument in this note is that with a lot of factories being closed, with a lot of the meat supply chain industry, we on this program talk to a lot of farmers and folks who are actually working on the fields, trying to figure out what to do with their produce and their cattle and their pork. I think there is a huge logjam in that system right now. So the bullish category would be, okay, maybe we'll see more of this being piled into store shelves, being more widely available. I can tell you anecdotally, of course, California was one of the first to really implement this and bring this into market. And even Impossible Foods, when they launched retail last year, it was first only in California. But I have to say that I'm not actually seeing as many of these products, whether it's Beyond or Impossible, on store shelves. And despite some of those early weeks where meat was actually flying off the shelves, I do think there has been a little bit more calibration in that regard. So I'm not quite sure. I do think that the sticky behavior for those people who, of course, are vegan, who are vegetarian, this is a product that they just won't replace. They're very happy to have this on the market. But as we know, only 5% of the US actually considers themselves vegan or vegetarian. So as much as, to your point, we kind of bloviate a lot about that space and how it's rapidly rising, I think the general American populace is very much carnivorous.
Daniel?
Well, it's funny, guys. To Jen's point about the note not being that bad, there's a little bit of a contradiction here because UBS is concerned both for smaller independent chains and restaurants that use Beyond Meat, but also for the big, larger national chains, which obviously traffic is way down for those. And yet it says at-home consumption remains robust. But I mean, the way you would go buy these things for at-home consumption is at the kind of grocery stores that in some cases are chains that UBS is worried about supply. And as Melody said, I'm seeing less supply of these things at my local grocery store when I go once a week. So it's hard to say that, you're bearish because of the chains and the restaurants where people would order an item with Beyond Meat, but at-home consumption is okay. I do think that there's something to what you're saying of when we come through this, maybe people with that income aren't going to necessarily decide to spend it on the hip, trendy, fake meat patties.
And one thing I do have to say is, remember, after Beyond went public in May, it almost was like every week we saw another innovation, right? Another conglomerate or a startup creating a pea-based patty. To be honest, something that was not actually comparable in taste. But I do think, of course, that has subsided. Of course, a lot of those initiatives are very, the extra fluff. And I don't think the R&D will be continued to be invested into. So that duopoly is further cemented with Impossible and Beyond. And in this case, unlike Uber and Lyft, where they went public so close to each other, Impossible was planning for an IPO, right? But in this environment, I don't think Impossible is slated to go public. So in some regard, Beyond will benefit or be, the main loser, because it's kind of the only tradable option at this point when it comes to plant-based meat.
Yeah, and I think certainly it fits into this question of, do trends that were nascent before this accelerate, or do some of those trends die and actually they never really were what they seemed to be at a certain point at the end of the last run.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.